Alex and Tommy, congratulations on the doc.
Thanks. Thanks, Eric. How you doing?
Wow, I'm doing great. What an amazing adventure. So let's jump in. Tommy, this was all you're doing, this is all your idea. Talk a little bit about where this concept came from and how you got Alex involved.
Yeah, so I mean the original idea was mine. The film was really Alex. I mean that element came because of Alex. But yeah, so the conception of the trip started because it was a few things. Like I'm involved in conservation issues through Patagonia, the clothing company that I work for, and I was on calls with this environmental nonprofit called the Alaska Wilderness League, trying to figure out ways to get involved in this like effort to protect Tongass National Forest from like old growth logging and as part of it, and when I was like learning about Tongass, I realized at one point that the Devil's Thumb, which is this mountain I'd heard about, was right in the middle of Tongass National Forest. I was like, the conservation side of me and the climbing side of me merged, and I was like, this is perfect. I have to do this. I have to make this trip happen. And then the bike ride element came really because I had been sidelined from my Achilles injury for almost 2 years, and I felt like biking to Alaska was going to be uh, both a good test, but a way to kind of like complete the healing cycle. Like being on a bike was going to pump a lot of blood through my body. I wasn't really on point with the actual rock climbing the way I have been a lot of my life. So the climbing element was like a little bit less difficult and it was more like an adventure toiling trip. So kind of all those ideas came together and that's what made this trip what it was.
Alex, talk a little bit about what you thought when you heard this idea proposed at the beginning.
Well, at first I thought it was crazy, but I mean, originally Tommy wanted to sea kayak through the Inside Passage all the way up too. He wanted to go fully human powered and walk, and I was like, that is crazy. And so initially, I thought that I would maybe just join him for the climbing objectives along the way. And actually, I think in the film we only see one of those climbs, but we stopped in two other areas before the Devil's Thumb to climb pretty cool rock climbing objectives. And so I thought that I would maybe just fly up and join him in places, but it's like not that easy to get to those places. And then it just seemed a little bit silly to sort of drop in and out of this incredible adventure that he would be having without me. And so I was like, oh, if I'm going to climb these peaks with him, I really should just do the whole adventure with him and have share the real experience. And so then it's kind of like, well, if we're gonna do it, let's just do it. And so then we made it a thing.
Yeah. Talk about the partnership together. You're not only partners, but you're doing this simul climbing, which is something I hadn't heard about before, of which enables you guys to go much faster than typical partners. Talk a little bit about what that is and how it kind of helped you in this journey.
I mean, Simo climbing is a technique to move really fast through very technical climbing terrain that was really kind of innovated through our friends and mentors, like the people that came before us, but that Alex and I have really kind of perfected. Like we do a lot of it, and we've gotten really good at it. And for me, it's made all the mountains shrink to like half the size. And so, if you have all these giant mountains that you want to climb your whole life, and suddenly they're only half the size, you got to figure out ways to make them grow big again. And so that's why we bike and stuff.
That's not why I biked. I biked because Tommy bikes. So I was like, well, if he can go, I'll
That's why I bike, yeah.
But it's also much more dangerous, right? I mean, and it's already quite a dangerous sport. So what's going
That's
through
that's
your mind?
a that's a more complicated calculus than you might think because particularly in the mountains like in Alaska, I mean, salmon climbing is higher risk in some ways, but because you're done so much faster, you're less tired, you're out for less time, you get better weather, presumably and like in the case of the climb on the Devil's Thumb, we were down before dark. You're kind of like, well, that's just obviously safer than trying to find your way off this giant mountain in the dark for your first time ever. And so it's like, yes, the climbing itself might be a little bit more dangerous in some ways, but the overall experience and your total risk, uh, you know, it's complicated, is what I'm saying.
I mean, one thing it allows us to do is climb without any gear, basically, no camping gear, which is actually way safer. Like if you imagine trying to like make your way through these like loose big mountains with like giant packs on, that's kind of dangerous. And the fact that we can just have a few things clipped to our harness because we get done so quick does make it a fair amount safer.
Talk about the actual climb and kind of what to you was the most surprisingly difficult part of it. What was the scariest moment for you for both of you?
I don't know. I think the climb actually went well. I mean, the whole time you always have question marks looming over you because we haven't been there, we don't know much about it, there's not that much information, it hasn't really been done much, and so every step of the way we're sort of wondering what might come next, and like might it suddenly get harder, like might it get more extreme. But it actually was all quite good. It was high quality rock, it was really pleasurable climbing, conditions were better than we expected, and it turned out to be actually not that hard for us, the final climb. But it's the uncertainty getting into it that's kind of the real challenge. It's like when you look up at those peaks and you're like, here's what we're going to do. And you're like, well, who knows if that's going to work? But then in this case, it worked perfectly. So it was great.
Yeah, I mean this was a 2 month trip and they had to make it into a 90-minute film, so they have to choose not to include a lot of things. And one of the things I think ended up getting cut mostly was the approach to the climb. Like historically, people had hiked up this glacier that has now turned into this like iceberg filled lake, and so we had to pioneer a new approach up this forested valley, and which meant like hellacious like Alaskan bushwhacking for days, and that to me was the most arduous part of the whole trip, and that was kind of a big surprise. Like I didn't know that that part of the trip was going to be actually in some ways harder than the climb itself.
Yeah,
Like we
physically it was way harder. It was crazy. Through the bush, we were doing 1 mile every 2 hours of like hard effort. That's like basically a quarter or a sixth of the speed that you would normally travel book like while backpacking. We were going so slowly and like and working so hard, and you're like, oh my God, it was grueling.
and we were with the film crew, and like there's people on the film crew that got trench foot, and they were like just wandering through this plant called Devil's Club, and there's a salmon run going on in the river that like literally you could just pick 2 foot salmon like right out of the river with your bare hands because there's so many salmon, and there was grizzly bears just like chowing on these salmon. There's thousands of salmon just strewn along the shores of the river, and we're like, oh, are we gonna get eaten by bears? There's like obviously so many bears, but since we were with 8 of us or whatever, a film crew, we saw one bear sort of briefly. I think they all fled. But that part of the trip was really memorable for me, and I think they just cut it in the end because the video footage of it was, you're just in you like you can't even see. The forest is so thick that you can't only see like a few feet through it. So that's, I guess, maybe not that interesting to watch on
Yeah,
video.
it's just like water and mud on some lens. It's like it through bushes, and you're sort of like, oh, this is less compelling than the epic mountain later.
Um, Alex and Tommy, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us, and we hope everyone gets a chance to see The Devil's Climb.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the You Interview channel. With over 3,000 original celebrity videos, we have one of the largest collections of celebrity interviews anywhere. So remember to like and comment on our videos and subscribe to the channel. If you want to get more involved, you can become a member of the channel. Membership has its perks. You can see exclusive celebrity videos and get the opportunity to ask our celebrity guests questions. We can't wait to hear from you.